Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. told you.
Let's fix the damn frame.
I told you it was going to be a problem. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Welcome to the show, folks, where you can watch me fix the live stream where Marc's video camera is not in the proper frame. But now it is, so we're good. We can start the show.
So much better. That was like right through my damn temple, and it hurt.
It really was. It was right. It was in exactly the wrong spot to be useful.
Cheers.
Good evening, everybody. I don't know what to do. We're live on time. What did I forget?
Only because I harassed you. Because there was a chance of it happening.
Did we forget something important?
It's recording.
See, the little recordy lights are all red, which is a good red.
People are interacting.
People are interacting. The stream is
live. Got a couple of news stories queued up.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Has to be. Hey.
I don't know.
Remember that thing I was telling you was going to happen? The reason I had to get the dogs out of the room?
It just happened. I heard barking.
Right, it just happened. So, good thing I thought ahead and got. This makes for a great podcast, folks. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Nate. And in case you haven't figured it out, I'm joined tonight by your good friend, Uncle Marc. Say hi, Marc.
I'm a good friend. And hi, Marc. You're my best friend. Hi, Johnny. Yeah.
All right, so tonight, welcome to the show, folks. Episode 110.
Crazy, right?
110. We're doing like, what is it, like 20-something shows per year. So do the math. That means we're at this over 4 years.
Hey, so whenever I'm
actually close to 5 years now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, really? No. Oh, that's fine. Whenever I talk to somebody who wants to blog or do a podcast or something, I think you've had this discussion as well. Lots of people have this idea for, their first one, part one.
Yes.
And then I've even seen it where people will write this really good technical blog. This is part one. And, they go over some fundamental basic setup thing. And they're like, on my next blog, I'm going to show you how to do this other really cool thing.
Or, yeah, I'll show you how to finish the thing I started here. Yeah.
And it's like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. As we quiver with Antissa.
And you never end up with the second part. Yeah. Yeah, that's...
Yeah. No, my internet didn't freeze. I froze intentionally.
Yep.
Thank you, J-Scar. Patient. So the fact that that you started this little podcast and we're up to 110, you deserve a pat on the back, man, because this is you're consistent, right? The Iron Sysadmin
we try.
delivers.
We try. We've only missed a handful of episodes in that 5 years, and then we had a couple where we had like not normal shows intentionally, right? Where like the one time we streamed Diablo 2, right? We've had a couple shows where there was no topic and we just talked news, and there've been some experimentation on what the show could be.
Kind of like,
and you guys have all been patient with that, and that's been great. So.
Kind of like when a sitcom does a very, a clip show, you realize that the well was dry that week in the writer's room, so they resort to a clip show.
Yeah. Although, I mean, sometimes those were useful. They would do them like right before the end of a season or right at the beginning of a season, when they pick up from a cliffhanger. But most of the time, I think you're right. It's just the writers were like, guys, what are we going to do a show on tonight? And, that's when you end up with Iron Sysadmin with no topic.
Didn't the Iron Sysadmin do a clip show once? Like we listened to episode 1 and Mystery Science Theatered it?
On the 4-year anniversary, which would have been almost a year ago now. Can you believe that? It would have been like last November we did that.
I'm thinking, and this would be work, by the way, and I don't know if you could pull it off. Maybe we need to do a best of Iron Sysadmin. Basically a clip show.
Let's do a clip show of Iron Sysadmin, and then that way we don't have to work one Thursday night. You just offload that all onto me doing all the editing, and then
because it would actually be a lot of work because we'd be like, and then there was the time that we had Chris Wright on, and then
I see what you okay. So
Or
you mean we still do the live show? We just
yeah,
instead of having a topic, we talk about things that happened and then
we
do
go to
it.
different clips. Yeah, like the
Like
first time you realized that I was going to sing Disney tunes,
like one of
and
those
you were
episodes
horrified.
where Blanche and the girls are sitting around the table with a cheesecake and
Right,
talking to Ma about
and the
such and
photo
such.
album.
Remember that time? Yeah, okay. Yes,
You,
my wife watches a lot of the Golden Girls, and
yeah, your wife.
it's ingrained in my head.
Your
So
wife.
anyway, right, we have a show for tonight. First of all, I want to say thank you for folks that are trying out. We have this audience participation link that we can use now with Riverside since we switched, and we haven't tried it out yet. And this week we did, right? So we have a couple folks that are leveraging that. Let us know what you think of it, because we'd like to know if we maybe want to use this more regularly with the show, and just for fun participation-y things on show night. And I won't belabor that much more, because you folks listening to the recorded version of the show are going to be like, shut up, I don't care. Get to the content.
Shut up.
So we're going to get to the content.
Up.
Tonight. So as you guys know, Mark and I work for a rather large software company. And that rather large software company that sells red fedoras, we have a lot of opportunities for our customers, or even folks, I guess, from the public in general, to participate in beta programs for upcoming software. And I don't know how much details we can give. Is that public knowledge now, Mark? I don't know. There's a beta coming up.
Yeah. There's going to be a public beta of our next operating system. One could argue with CentOS Stream, RHEL 9, which is going to be our next release. CentOS Stream 9 has been worked on in the public eye for months now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyone who follows CentOS should probably guess that there's going to be a RHEL 9 soon. I mean, come on. Of course there is. You think we're going to stop with 8?
Well, we said it at Summit a few years ago.
There would be a RHEL 9? Well, yeah, I think that's pretty easy to assume.
Predictable release cadence every 3 years.
Yes, every 3 years. It is. I'll let you in on a little secret. It's been about 2.5 years since RHEL 8 came out.
RHEL 9's coming out in the spring. There you go.
So at any rate,
That's the plan.
That's the plan, right? Obviously, there's always chances for software release dates to slip. Like that's the caveat I give to anyone I ever say when a release of any software ever is going to be. But the plan is spring. Yeah. Anyway, all that preamble to say that the open beta for RHEL 9 is going to be soon. And it got me thinking, because I've seen this now from both the customer side and from the vendor side. And I just thought we'd talk tonight a little bit about, as a customer, or even as just Joe Public, should you or why would you participate in public betas for software that you care about? Or maybe software that you depend on as a business, right? So I've had this conversation with a couple customers at this point, and in fact, I've got one that wants to be involved in our upcoming beta, and they're a team of folks that are definitely techies, as you might expect from any team that might be working with a Red Hat TAM, right? These are people that know what they're doing. They run operating systems. They're responsible for a large organization, a large corporation, and they want to get their hands on the software, not just out of curiosity, but for lots of other very business-centric reasons, right? So that's kind of what I thought we'd talk about tonight. And we're going to touch on stuff like, if you do participate in a beta, what should you expect? And what do you think the beta program itself, the people who are running the beta, expect from you in return, right? Did I cover that well enough, Mark? You got anything to add?
I added a couple of things to the notes, not necessarily related to enterprise software, commercial enterprise software.
Yep.
But
from an expectations perspective, and yeah.
Well, just some trends I've noticed, both recent and, quite frankly, not so recent.
Okay.
Because I think beta, even the definition of beta, has kind of changed over time.
It has. User expectation. It has. Well, let's start there, right? So in most software, there's a definite life cycle or cycle, a release cycle. You want to say maybe
Sure.
whether it's million
The
dollar
circle of
right,
life
whether it's $1 million
as we
enterprise
push the
software,
software. Oh, sorry.
whether it's $1 million enterprise software, or Joe Schmo's pretty good application foo. Generally, it goes from a development phase to a we think this might be ready to release to people phase, to a okay, let's test this out in a controlled way phase, and then to a release phase, right? Some people call that release candidate phase. Some people call it alpha phase. Some people call it alpha then beta, right? Some people skip alpha and go right to beta. The point is that you may hear these terms thrown around, right? So what I've seen generally in many projects is, especially open source projects, what you have is a release candidate that comes up, right?
Sure.
That's not always alpha or beta software. It is, we think this is probably ready to go. We're going to flag it as a release candidate. And then folks who are interested in this particular project can expect something like release ready content from this thing, right?
Yeah. Here's my take on that flow, and I'm gonna kind of work backwards. Like
Sure.
if production is what we're saying you can run reliably, and oh my God, that can be a hell of an argument, especially
Right.
on a .0 release.
Yep. Yep.
Um, release candidates are essentially the company saying, we think this is ready to go, but if there's any critical bugs, let's squish them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say beta would be software that is feature complete, but there's obvious bugs or possibly some missing functionality. Like all the stuff looks like it's in there, but maybe something doesn't quite work properly yet.
Right.
But beta to me means we've got this we've got it in a situation where we're not going to add any major new functionality. To me, that's alpha. Alpha's like, yeah, it runs, but if you press the wrong button, it might explode.
Right.
And there's components that are missing.
And by the way, here's the buttons you shouldn't press.
Yeah,
right?
because we just haven't figured out why those don't work yet.
Yeah, right.
The intern
right.
wrote those in the summer, and we haven't figured out why they're broken.
We don't have the time to bring in
Yeah.
another intern yet, right?
So that's kind of the way I think about it. Alpha, there's crap that outright isn't you want in there, but it's not there yet, or
Right.
just the struts are in there, like
Right.
the placeholders in there. But beta should be feature complete,
Right.
and it just hasn't gone through the rigorous, either your rigorous in-house testing or public testing.
Right. And there are some smaller projects that use that term release candidate almost like this is a release, right? Like I've seen
Yeah.
some of them that it'll be Project X version 14 RC1, RC2, RC3, and then it'll just go through that almost forever. It seems like they never get to a point where it's no longer an RC. It's always, it's always got RC something at the end of it. Now, a lot of that depends on what the project is, how big their development staff is. I'm not knocking on those projects because generally these are things that are just passion projects, and they're like, we think it's ready. We need people to try it out, right? And that might take 5 years, right?
Yeah, and that kind of, I wanted to have a little discussion towards the end, but in the show notes, I threw an article down there, and this article is from 2001.
Okay.
So it talks about places like Fresh Meat, which is not it's not the line from the butcher from Diablo. Fresh Meat.
Fresh Meat.
You probably remember that, right? It was
Yes.
a website.
I remember Fresh Meat. Yeah.
I actually released a few things on Fresh Meat, right? And the feeling is that, especially in open source, sometimes stuff never gets out of, air quote beta.
Yeah.
There's software that we use every day that technically never left beta, but for whatever reason, it just the developer never crossed that arbitrary line in the sand and said, "Yo, this is,"
where they wanted to
production
say,
level.
yes, this is ready. Yeah. I mean, you can't mention beta without thinking about Gmail. How long did that spend in beta? How long did it have that little beta flag next to the logo? Probably
Isn't
10
it
years.
still in beta? Yeah, I guess it did. Yeah.
No, I mean, there was like this big deal when they finally took away the beta flag. And from what I remember,
When
Google did it quietly, and people noticed, like, oh, wait, it's not in beta anymore?
when did it go out of beta?
I don't know. It's been a while now, but it felt like 10 years it was in beta.
Because we've been using we right when I got to Red Hat in 2015 is when we were pivoting to Gmail.
Yeah.
Was it out of beta at that point? I hope.
I think it was then, yes. Before they went and started building quote unquote enterprise around it, like G Suite,
Okay.
I think they considered it no longer beta. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that. But anyway, my point is, and I think your point is, that the term beta is a lot looser than it used to be. Like, it used to be, oh, it's beta, you can't run this. Now it's like, well, beta might be good enough, because the term beta has become, like, almost ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So as far as beta testing goes, I think there's a couple of schools of thought, and I'm going to go in with I'm going to put my gamer hat on for a second.
All
Do I
right.
actually have a gamer hat? Well, I got Elsa, so that's going to have to do.
Is that your gamer hat? Okay.
This is my Elsa hat. So
It's a
I
very
can't
nice hat.
speak. I can't speak for every gamer, but in the online gaming community, especially, um, a beta is often looked at as an opportunity to play the game before anybody else.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I think a lot of companies got into this habit of using an open beta or even a closed beta, friends and family, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
as a thing to build up hype.
Yes.
And a lot of players were never actually doing beta testing. They wanted to play the new hotness before everybody else by getting into the beta.
Absolutely.
So I think that attitude is actually completely the opposite of what makes a good beta participant.
Yes, and that's actually a good sort of transition into a topic we did want to touch on today, and that is, if you're going to participate in a beta, what is expected of you, right? So let's say this isn't, Joe's pretty good application foo. This is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or this is Windows 11, or this is some big thing that you have been granted permission to participate in the beta, or maybe it is Diablo 2, right? Or a game. Like, I participated in the World of Warcraft open beta, which again was more like a stress test. It was less of a
Yeah.
bug finding thing. It was more of a stress test. But what is expected of you? And I don't know if you want to start on this, and then we'll just have a conversation. What do you think? I know you've got ideas. You've
Well,
got
so
feelings.
you actually brought up a particular type of beta that if you just show up is actually handy, and that's a special kind of beta. And again, this is typically for online products called the stress test.
Right.
And again, it's something that online games have come to do. Get a whole bunch of people to play it. They're not paying for it, so they can't bitch if it doesn't work. And the idea is to see what the infrastructure can handle. Because as we know, working in software professionally, code that works just fine under normal conditions, when it is stressed out, that's often where it'll break. That's where you can really see the weakness.
Yep.
So I think when you can load test beta software properly, I think that's really useful. Find out where how hard you can push it, what breaks when it's pushed too hard, and be able to, if the software in question can collect logs and stuff automatically, I guess that's better, because I think most normal computer users have no idea how to write a bug report or how to properly, submit a failure
Right.
report.
Right. And as a company that's running an open beta, you're going to have to expect that. You're going to have to expect Joe User writing in going, the thing don't work.
It didn't work.
The thing didn't work, and I lost all my progress, and I want it back.
Yeah.
Bug
So
reports turn into a complaint fest instead of
right.
instead of actual productive bug reports.
And
So
so as a company, I'd like that feedback. Now, as someone who I feel like I'm hogging the conversation, but there's only two of us, so I'll try not to feel too guilty about that. But
I did
I'm
tell
gonna
you to
say
talk.
something. I'm gonna say something as someone who has wanted to participate in betas in the past. What sometimes happens is you have every intention, you install the beta on your system, and then you kind of sit back and you say, well, what now? How do I know if this is working? Because not everybody, especially I would think individuals or smaller companies, have a testing suite or workloads they that they can run on it to slam on it and hammer on it. So I think sometimes, um, as a beta tester, you sometimes want to look to the company to say, hey, what do you actually want me to do with this? So as companies, I think sometimes we can, if we give customers or beta testers, maybe they're customers, maybe they're not paying money. So maybe if
right,
we give the
maybe
beta
they're
testers
prospective customers in some cases.
some guidance on, hey, here's what we'd like you to try with the software, that might be super helpful. Because I'll be honest, I installed RHEL 9 in a Vagrant machine on my laptop
Uh huh.
because I agreed to write a new C groups blog on C groups and Podman containers under RHEL 9.
Yeah.
And I haven't done much on that yet, but like I'm not entirely sure what I would do as Uncle Mark to test RHEL 9 right now.
I
Like,
agree.
oh,
Right.
run.
So, well, first of all, I had a point I wanted to get back to on the
But I'll
stress
shut up
test
for a
thing,
bit. Yeah.
but to comment on that specifically, when excuse me, when I was still a customer when RHEL 8 came out, and I got into the RHEL 8 public beta through the Red Hat accelerators. I mean, not that I had to go through them, but I knew about it through the accelerators, and I got in touch with, there was this program where they wanted customers or people to write personal blogs about media, or not media, about features of RHEL 8. And even though I was still working in the industry at the time, I sat down with the RHEL 8 beta and I'm like, what do I test? Like, what do I want to do? So I picked Podman because it was new and I was interested in containers, and I wrote about Podman. And that blog is still popular to this day. If I go to my website, I can see that people are still hitting that, even though it was like early access stuff. Podman is still a relatively new thing to some people that are used to Docker. But I wanted to circle back to when you said about stress test beta, and this does rope into what a company may expect from people that are participating in their beta program. And that is basically guidelines, right? So I'm in a stress test. Just say I'm in a stress test for a popular game or for something, anything that might want to benefit from a stress test. So that gives me like all the rights in the world to just DDoS their service, right? I'm stress testing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty
Does it
much.
or doesn't it, right? So
Well,
if I like take down their systems through some malicious act and I claim that I'm just stress testing, like, is that still not cool?
so I think there's a couple of ways around that. A couple of thoughts on that. If it's because you found some flaw with the, let's assume it's a game, right?
Right.
And you find some flaw with it that puts it in a state where it like spams traffic or DDoSes.
Yeah.
Well, then that's how, file a report on it, and hopefully they can fix it. If you're attacking their infrastructure with your botnet, no,
Right.
that's not a valid part of their stress test.
Yeah. The point I was trying to make is there could be guidelines around a beta program. Not all of
Yeah.
them outline that sort of thing, but there's definitely, when you get into a beta program, especially a closed beta program, there's usually some sort of agreement you have to agree to, which might be an NDA, it might be guidelines, it might be guardrails. Test this, don't test that, don't do these things, please do those things. You know what I mean? And that's a thing that you're
Sure.
going to want to pay attention to if you're getting into it. Now, if it's a public beta, generally those things are waved away because it's public and they want, they consider this thing ready for anybody to hit, right? So that means if you're press and you're just trying to get a scoop out of it, you can probably do that, right? You still shouldn't be a dick and attack their servers, but right, this falls under the same like being a responsible person, right?
Right. So, but obviously, we're talking about either a game or a software as a service in that situation. If it's like most of the Red Hat stuff is stuff you would download, run on-prem or in your own VM, so that wouldn't be applicable in that case too.
Right. All right. So I guess we touched on kind of like both topics, like what can a company expect from you as a beta tester, and what should you expect from a company as a beta tester, right?
So why can't the company just have their own? Why do I have to help a company test something? Aren't they paying people for that? Shouldn't they have to pay for that as part of the development?
That's a really good question, right? So yes, they have internal testers and they go through everything they can think of, but you have to remember that in a lot of cases, the folks doing that testing are also the folks who help write the software. And with a big enough company, they may have interns or whatever, someone that's not part of the development cycle that goes in and does some testing. But let's be honest, nothing. No, what's the old quote? No plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, that sort of applies to software, right? No one thinks quite like a million users might. Because you're always going to find that person who does something completely insane and causes your thing to crash. So I've probably told this story before on the show, but when I worked at that little web host that I've talked about in the past, we had a small development team, and one of the things that they wrote was a shopping cart application. Now, if you're ever going to be a small development team and you want a high-stress job, write a shopping cart application, because there's money involved, there's product involved, and there's customers involved. And I don't know any way to get more stressful except if you're writing software that runs ventilators or something. But anyway,
you could have to answer to it like some sort of a government oversight division, like the FDA or something.
Right, I guess that's valid. But they were working on rewriting a piece of their shopping cart, and they handed me a website that they claimed was done, and they said, have at it. Tell us if you find any problems with it. So, like I did the usual stuff. I bought a fake product. I put in a fake credit card number. They gave me a test credit card number that they said would pass the test. They were using authorize.net, if I remember correctly, to validate credit cards. And they have this special number you can put in so that it'll say like yup or no or whatever. And then after I did all that and it all worked fine, I went around and I did stuff like I put stuff in my shopping cart. And then I noticed that on the shopping cart page, like the checkout page, the prices were text fields. So I changed the prices, and it totally accepted that. So then I'm like, what if I make the prices negative? So I made them all negative, and I submitted it that way. And it at the end of the day, it said that it was going to pay me $20,000 or something. And I said, hey, guys, I think I found some problems. I found some bugs. And they were like, why did you do that? You asked me to test it. What made you think of that? I'm like, you gave me a text box. What did you think I was going to do, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's the sort of thing that the developer might not think of because they're like, why would anybody do that? But the person testing it might be like, well, this is a thing that some malicious person might do, and there you go. Uh-oh, I have a visitor. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get out. She's fishing something out of the box on my door.
Some things never change.
Yeah, I guess I should have locked the door.
Can't wait for 15-year-old Harper. Anyway.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Come on, close the door.
I'm assuming that was Harper because of the height.
Because of the height, yeah, that was the short one.
Because it's a little grainy on this screen.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why you would probably have an open beta versus paid, because you generally will have paid quality assurance QA staff, right? But they don't catch everything, right?
Nope.
Sorry, it's time for a drink. All right, let's see. What else did we... Oh, yeah, someone's sharing the old a QA engineer walks into a bar joke. He orders 0 beers. Yeah. He orders 9,999,999 beers. He orders a lizard. He orders -1 beers. There we go! I'm a QA engineer. First customer walks in, asks where the bathroom is, and the place bursts into flames. Yep, that's a perfect example right there. So anyway,
Exactly.
all right. So I think we're gonna get real for a minute and talk about if you do commit to being in a beta program, what should you bring to the table? We touched on this a little bit, but we didn't really cover it in depth, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is especially if you're in some kind of a closed beta, something you had to apply to be in, something that has limited slots, you want to make sure that you come to the table with time to do the thing that you're supposed to be testing. Like, I don't care if that's a video game, the Rel beta, Joe's pretty good Application X that we keep using as a good example. Like, if it's a limited thing and you have to apply, it's not a badge of honor that you got in. It's a privilege that you got in, right? Is there a better word for that?
I'm just shaking my head because, as pretty as that sounds, as a TAM, one of the things that we do, and you know this, is we try and we offer betas to our customers, and we get them into these betas. I can't tell you how many times my customers have been like, "Yeah, I thought I'd have time, but I don't because life in IT sucks."
Yeah,
That the struggle is real there.
it really
And
is. It really is. And you know what? It happens, right? You commit to a thing, you didn't have the time you thought you had, and it happens, right? So I'm not trying to chastise those folks. What I am
uh,
trying to say
I
is if there's 100 beta slots and 99 of those people say I didn't have time, you now have one beta tester, right? Now obviously that's
oh I
that's like
agree.
way far end of the spectrum. It's probably
It
more like, 30% or something, I don't know.
I would like to actually know what the failure rate is because honestly, um, yeah, just give it to Christian. Honestly, it's something I've noticed with my customers. I don't mean to shame them, but more often than not, customers of mine who offered to do it just couldn't pull it off. And I know them. I mean, one of my former customers is on this podcast right now in the chat room. I get how stressful some of their environments are, and
Hmm.
some of the pointy-haired bosses that they either work for or worked for.
Right.
So I generally don't blame the system administrator who had every intention. I blame their shitty management for not giving them the time.
That's valid.
How's
That's
that
valid.
sound, Andy?
Yeah, right. So, I guess the only point I would make to that is I had a point. What was it now?
I don't know.
Oh, if you're going to commit to a closed beta, something that you have to apply for and whatnot, and it is in a corporate environment, you may want to run it by your pointy-haired boss and say, "Look,
That's true.
I'm gonna participate in this beta. It's for software we depend on, and these are the reasons why I want to participate in the beta, and this is why I think it's going to benefit us as a company." Because
Right,
if it's just I'm curious and I want to see what the new features are, um, then there's probably a good chance that the first anything that takes you away from that, you're going to pretty easily say, "Well, I was only doing it out of curiosity anyway. I'm going to go do this more important thing," right? Whereas if you have management buy-in and they're like, "Yes, we want to know what's coming in that application, so we want you to dedicate some time to it," you may actually have time to dedicate to it, right?
right, and try and negotiate some time. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna test this on Friday afternoons. You know,
sure, sure. There's a famous what was it? Google? I think it was Google. Their development teams had what did they call it? 20% time or something, where
yeah,
Friday afternoons, or maybe it wasn't just Friday afternoons, but it was you get 20% of your time, work hour time, to just work on stuff that you're passionate about, right? And a lot of neat things came out of Google doing that. And of course, we know what happens to neat things with Google. They either succeed or they get a lot of buy-in and Google says this isn't profitable and they turn it off.
yeah.
So maybe that's not the best way to release software, but it is a good way to get your workers sort of passionate about things, right? It's not a bad thing. Maybe you just shouldn't release those things and take them away later. Anyway, I got off the beaten track there. The point is, if you can actually get buy-in from management and they say, yes, we see the value of you participating in this beta, maybe you can then actually participate in the beta. John the Nice Guy's crying about Google Wave. I forget what Google Wave was. I remember that it went away and people liked it.
Wasn't that a document collaboration system that basically was replaced with Docs?
You could be right. I miss Google Plus, to be honest.
I don't think it had anything to do with the ocean.
No, it wasn't like something that measured the waves of the ocean. That's totally what that was.
No, I don't think
Predecessor
so.
to Google Docs. There you go. Google Wave.
Yeah. Oh God, I remembered. Yeah.
You did. Good job.
So, what's in it for the person participating in the beta? Obviously, if they're given good feedback, the company, the developers, they can fix bugs, address issues and stuff. What's in it for the beta participant?
So the beta participant, I guess there's two ways to look at it. One is people who consider themselves technologists or are passionate about technology, just love to get their hands on new software, and they want to see how it works, and they want to see what it does, and it gives them, I don't know how to describe it, but there's a feeling associated with being trusted with pre-release code, right, and being trusted with.
You feel special.
You feel special, right?
You're an insider.
That could be right. You feel like an insider. I remember way back, like in the mid '90s, when Windows 95 was on its, or no, it was 98, when Windows 98 was ready to be released. I remember wanting so badly to get my hands on the beta of Windows 98 because I was a Windows 95 user at the time. I hadn't found Linux yet. And I was just like chomping at the bit to see what this looked like. I had a little 486. It could barely run Windows 98, but I insisted on getting the beta. I found it on some wares site, downloaded it, probably infected myself with all kinds of nasty crap. Installed it on my little 486. 98. I infected myself with Windows 98. And I was just like enamored by the gradient on the toolbars or the title bars. Remember that was like a big UI change from Windows 95 to 98. But anyway,
actually, if I remember, 98 was considered to be one of the high watermarks of Windows.
Yeah, 98. What was it? Second edition or whatever.
Millennium.
Yeah, Millennium was terrible. But anyway, my point is there was a definite feeling of like. I was just really, it was exciting to get my hands on this software that nobody else had yet, right? So
exciting and new.
That's one perspective, and the other perspective is kind of just what we talked about. You get your hands on this software that maybe your business depends on, and Marc sings in the background while you do it, and you can see the features, you can see what you're going to need, what you can see what you are going to have to deal with in coming months when this becomes a released thing that you're expected to upgrade to, right? Do you have any other points you were trying to get at with that, Marc? Or did I cover them? This isn't rehearsed, by the way, folks.
No.
He's feeding me stuff. I'm trying my best.
But now I got the Love Boat theme playing in my head because it's exciting and new.
The Love Boat.
We're expecting you. The Love Boat. Used to watch that at my grandmother's many Friday nights when we'd sleep over.
My gosh, was that like the 80s version of The Bachelor?
It would have been like the 70s actually.
Oh, okay.
And it was a drama, not a reality show.
I remember it being on on TV when I was a kid, but it was probably in reruns, I guess, at that point. So it was more like a soap opera.
It was a drama.
It was a drama.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, Dukes of Hazzard, and then I think Love Boat was on right after Dukes of Hazzard, and then Fantasy Island with Ricardo Montalban.
Oh, he's the guy who played Khan in Star Trek. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
I didn't know that.
He played this badass Mr. Rourke.
Well, that's what he played.
Mr. Rourke, who, with his silvery tongue, defeated the devil not once but twice.
The devil
on episodes of Fantasy Island. Yeah,
wow.
Old Scratch, Satan. You know.
Interesting. All right. So anyway,
yeah.
now that we've sidetracked as usual You had a point, I think, before you started singing about the Love Boat.
I don't know if I had a point. We just wanted to know. Yeah. Now, like all things in IT, things change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trends happen. Um, in gaming, there has been this trend, which some people consider a little a little bit cancerous, and some people actually love the concept of early access.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, when you have a beta of something, you're not paying money. It's generally free.
Right.
Early access says, "Hey, I'm developing this game. It is maybe half done, maybe it's 70% done, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to charge money for it. And I might not be charging the same amount that it'll be when it's fully released, but I'm charging you money for the privilege of playing it in early access, and it's going to change over time and whatever. So you're basically in a pay. By my definition of beta, it doesn't even meet a beta status. You're in a paid alpha because it's not feature complete.
Yeah.
We actually do that every Monday night. That Valheim is early access, that game we play.
That is true.
It has about half the content in it that the studio means to put in.
It's kind of crazy. And we bought that.
And here's where things are really crazy. I bought, well, maybe Cyberpunk's a terrible example. Well, no, Cyberpunk was a full release.
Yeah. That's actually worth talking about, but that could be a whole other topic, but continue.
I have my gaming dollars, my fun per hour, the value of my dollar per hour is significantly better for Valheim, which is an early access title,
Mm-hmm.
than for Cyberpunk 2077, which was a AAA production release.
Right. I never even finished Cyberpunk.
I finished it and I started a second playthrough and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It, unlike Skyrim or Witcher 3 or whatever, it really the another playthrough that's just not worth it. And J Scar, I see your comments about 2040. Is it 2047 or 2077?
2077.
Yeah. His game took place in a different year, which might explain the different experience.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
I actually, there were a lot of pissy moany babies when it came out.
Yeah.
I was not one of them. I had very few issues with it. I had to reload less than half a dozen times with a bugged mission.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was that one where you're Keanu Reeves blasting fools from the helicopter, spinning around the roof.
I didn't even get that far.
And the game, for what it was, I had a lot of fun, like using that one hack that would set people on fire. I mean,
now we know why Mark likes lighters.
No, you could hack into their cyberware and like overheat them, and I had it leveled up so much that I killed hordes of fools without them ever even seeing me.
They just lit on fire. That's awesome.
That I just lit on fire.
But this
that's
brings
why
up,
you need to firewall your SSH port.
Right. This brings up a great point, though, right? So you've got Valheim that we paid a little bit of money for a game, right? $20 for an early access, quote unquote, early access game. $20 doesn't break the bank, right? It's not a ton of money. You're getting a functional but not content complete game. So you might say it's feature complete but not content complete, right? If you want to make that distinction.
What I'm going to say is all the buttons in the game and all the stuff in the game now work.
Right. Right. So you don't end up in like a bugged situation, right, where the game is arguably unplayable, right?
If you sail far enough away from the original islands you start on, you start to enter areas like the Mistlands and the far north and the far south, which are biomes that are not populated. So it's literally just empty.
Right.
It's essentially the colored terrain and some of the atmospheric effects, but there's no monsters.
But none
there's
of the
nothing
stuff
to harvest.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is we paid $20 for the game, right? And as far as I know, there's not going to be a point where they're going to be like, all right, game's done, pony up the other half. Right?
They've basically said if you bought into early access, you own the game,
Right,
and when it's done, you'll have all the content. The
right.
price might go up for people
If you buy it
after
after
early
it's
access
done,
is over. Yeah.
right? That's my point, right? So we bought into early access for a lower price point. We're enjoying the game. We're giving them feedback, right? We're giving them playability. We're giving them players. We're giving them hype, right? I mean, we're talking about it on this show, so now people might go out and buy Valheim at the lower price because we talked about it and it's cool. Um, but then you've got the other end of that spectrum where it's a game company keeps everything under wraps, keeps it all quiet except for the game hype, because of course they want to sell it on launch day. Um, and then they release something at full price, which Cyberpunk was a $70 game if I remember correctly, $60 at least.
I think 60 on PC.
And don't get me wrong, when I bought it, which was a couple weeks after launch, it was very playable, right? But people who bought it on launch day got a steaming pile of crap in some cases. Your experience wasn't that. You had a playable experience. Some people claim it was basically unplayable. Now, again, I wasn't there. I didn't see what they experienced, but that's a big deal, right? To pay $60 for a thing. Now, again, $60 isn't killing most people, but there are people, especially in the sort of gaming society or gaming group of people that that's a big purchase for them. $60. That's a lot
Oh,
of money.
dude, when I was in college and right after graduating college, I would buy games at Electronic Boutique or
Hmm.
Babbage's, both places that aren't around anymore. And this was when you had a modem, maybe.
Right.
So a company would have an opportunity to like, if there was a problem, asking your users to download a patch over a modem was kind of a big deal. And I do remember buying full priced games that were like hot friggin' garbage.
Yeah.
And you had no recourse.
Right. Now, the big difference today is that those games, if they're on release day, a steaming pile of garbage, if they survive release day, can be updated relatively easily. Because most games
Maybe.
nowadays come with the ability to send patches and updates and whatnot, right? Now, some game developers don't care and they don't release updates, but others are very, sort of vigilant there. We gave a perfect example of No Man's Sky last time we recorded, right? No Man's Sky was arguably a difficult, problematic game on launch day, but the developers stuck with it and they kept releasing content, and now it's a very good game. I mean, you and I spend a ton of time playing that game at this point. But that's another point on that same spectrum, right? You've got early access, cheaper game, not all the content, but functional. It's almost
So,
like a long running beta.
yeah.
Then you've got games that come out that maybe did or did not have an open beta, but when they came out, they were just garbage, but full price. And then they get a really bad name for it. And then you have games that do that, but then spend the time to fix it, right? So,
So I'm going to ask a question, and this is to our people who are on chat as much as anything.
mm-hmm,
Let's not worry about games for a moment.
mm-hmm.
And this kind of goes back to the article I pointed out from 2001. How many of us can think of something we use very frequently that never even made it out of beta? But maybe it's something in your toolbox that is like, to you, production quality.
I don't know if I can name one off the top of my head, but they're definitely out there. I mean, there's probably tools that you can just get through, a DNF install on your Fedora or even your RHEL box that have questionable release status. Maybe not on RHEL because a lot of that is vetted, but um, I'm thinking specifically in like InfoSec, right? Some of those InfoSec tools, they never see release because they're not for sale products. They're quote
Yeah.
unquote hacking tools, right? But yeah, Gmail from before is a perfect example. How many people depended on that as their primary mailbox for years when it was still quote unquote beta, right? Like it was fully functional, but Google kept hiding behind that beta thing as
I
like,
am
you know.
fully functional.
That's a great reference. Anyway, See if
Okay,
anybody's commenting here.
Jaskar says Proton Mail is still in beta.
There you go.
I'm trying. And I came up with this question, and I'm like, I really should have an answer myself. And now I'm desperately thinking.
Now you're like, what? What did I have in mind when I thought that up?
I just know that I know I have fired off commands in Linux, and something that starts with a 0 dot something is in beta, and I know I've done that, and it's been shit that has been important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we've gone all over the place talking about betas and participating in betas and whatnot. I think we hit all the points on the outline that we have here, and a few others.
I guess my point with the point I'm trying to make with my last little thing talking about that is, I think in the open source world especially, we're sometimes in a very strange place.
Yes.
Where the lines blur a lot because of the upstream development model.
Yeah, well, the project I was talking about earlier that was always in release candidate phase was there's a window manager called Enlightenment, and a lot of folks have toyed with Enlightenment, I'm sure. But
did that ever hit 1.0?
They changed their numbering, right? So it used to be like O.13, O.14, O.15 was how they would release stuff. So they never had a 1.0 release. But the dot releases were essentially releases, right? But they called them release candidates. But I don't know if they ever, like, Enlightenment now is labeled as like Enlightenment 17, which I think is still O.17, for example. Enlightenment 18 is .18. So I don't know. Maybe that's just their numbering, but
yeah. So I'm just doing an RPM dump now.
You're looking for anything that starts in 0?
I am, because now I'm fascinated with the idea.
Yeah.
Well, there's various fonts and stuff. Account service starts with a 0.
Account service? That sounds important.
Yeah, yeah, that does, doesn't it? AppStream.
AppStream.
Yeah, AppStream is on my Fedora box, AppStream-0.14.5. But yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that. But if that's just the RPM for the enabling the repo.
Sure.
Avahai, which is that's something. Yeah, that's at 0.8.
Interesting.
I think that's some sort of system level shit.
It is. I'm trying to remember what that's responsible for.
Bolt,
it's at the tip of my brain.
Yeah, Bolt, which might be because of the Thunderbolt dock. I'm not sure. Is at 0.9.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, if you run a Linux system, just do run an RPM command and sort them or whatever, and look for stuff that starts in zeros and see what might be important to you. Because if it starts with a 0, let's assume it never officially released.
Right?
Yeah, the dbus glib is at 0.111110. Flatpak. Yeah.
All right, so I think we've covered the topic. Do you have any other points we want to talk about? And folks, if anybody either in chat or anyone listening to this after the fact has any comments on this, feel free to send them our way, either on the social medias or our Discord.
Now I'm absolutely fascinated by some of the shit that's like the elf tools. Oh my god.
I think I've lost Marc,
It's
folks.
elf. Okay, I'll stop.
I've lost him. All right, so I think that covers up this particular topic. We're doing the thing where we're going to split the show in half. Folks, I'm also going to ask if anybody, because we've done like 3 shows now where we cut them in half and release them as 2 shows. If anybody hates this or loves it, please let us know. I want to hear.
We hates the pesky hobbitses.
We hates the split show. So anyway, if you want to hear our chat and our news and whatever, you're going to want to look for the B segment of this show. It'll be split in A and B. And for those of you watching live, we're going to go to a break. And
if you watch live, there's no difference.
There's no difference. If you watch, see, that's it. If you watch live, you can just commit 2 or 3 hours of your Thursday night to watching the show, and then you don't have to worry about the split. And with that, we're going to go to a break. You got any final words, Marc?
Well, they're not really final, are they?
Well, okay, final for this half.
Just again, as someone who fights to get people in betas, I just echo the plea that if you're accepted to a closed beta, do your best to participate.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is.
If it's just about finding out what's going to be in it, nag your TAM or whoever for the release notes, and he or she'll get them to you.
Right. Right. All right, so
final countdown. J Scar said the final countdown, so I didn't really have a choice but to respond.
We're gonna go to break. Ready?
Push the button, Frank.
Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. We're back. For those of you that are joining through that little audience link that I shared in Discord, you got to hear us talk about all kinds of crazy topics, like strip clubs in Pennsylvania, how Marc saw Pink Floyd's The Wall instead of E.T. when he was a kid. You know, good stuff.
Maybe this should be a patron thing where you can join.
Well, maybe it will be. I don't know. That's a thought, because there was a point where I had that like special sort of backstage thing that I did through Discord so that patrons could see what was going on behind the scenes, and nobody really ever used it.
Nobody wants to see your friggin' hands.
That is what it came down to. It was like a hand cam. Kind of weird. It was kind of weird.
There's a very narrow group of people that are both Iron Sysadmin fans and who have a fetish for male hands. So I
maybe they just wanted to see the beer I was drinking, Marc. You don't know.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So anyway, we don't have that anymore, but we have this cool little like audience link that I can share from Riverside that gives you kind of the same thing, except it's almost like you're part of our call, except you can't speak. You can chat with us. You can see what we're doing. You can see this like weird cut off version of my video because that's just the way it comes through. It's the same thing you'll see on the stream, but it's cut weird. So anyway, is it beta? No, it's not beta. This is just the way Riverside is.
It might be beta. I'm not going to try and find the about box because close it by mistake.
Unless Andy's still talking about strip clubs in Pennsylvania, those could be beta. We were talking about the stupid laws surrounding strip clubs in Pennsylvania, or at least as they were 20 years ago.
Yeah,
anyway.
Pennsylvania's got some weird ass regulations.
Pennsylvania's weird.
I'm not gonna lie.
Pennsylvania's weird.
You can buy a gun from a vending machine, but they're really weird when it comes to liquor, and you still can't hunt on Sundays. No, you actually can't, but you can buy a firearm pretty easily.
You really can. You really can. It's kind of scary.
And ask is not a noun.
Ask is not a noun? Was that?
So don't use ask as a noun.
Is that just in Pennsylvania?
No, ask is never a noun.
The ask was Riverside. I get it. No, Riverside's not beta. And as far as I know, nor are the laws in Pennsylvania. Strip clubs are not. Anyway, back to why we're here. We're here to have a show, and we're at the part of the show where we have the announcements. And the announcements today contain our usual Patreon update. So I want to say thank you to the patrons, and as usual, we're going to read the list. If this list ever gets so long that I can't read it, that'll be a really great thing. But until then, I'm going to keep reading it on the show.
Well,
so
then we'll just break the show into 3 parts. And
one of which is just the read-off. Look, I used to listen to a show. In fact, if anybody is a Star Trek fan, you're going to want to listen to this show. It's called Star Trek: The Next Conversation. And it's hilarious. It's these 2 guys, one of which is a Star Trek fanboy, the other of which has never seen, well, before the show started, had never seen an episode of Star Trek ever. And they're watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. Kind of like we did that episode we were talking about, where we MST3K'd it, right? They watch the show together, talk about it, and record the audio, and that's the podcast. Well, at the end of the show, because the show is turning out to be like 3 hours, because it's an hour episode and all of their commentary and whatnot. Plus, they have a chat section that rivals our own, where, they just go off on all kinds of tangents. But they read all of their patrons in the credits at the end of the show, so that if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to. It takes them 15 minutes to get through just the patrons. That's how popular the show is. It's crazy, but check out the show. It is cool. I haven't listened in a while because I don't have that much time to commit to podcasts anymore, other than our own. But it's a hilarious show. All that to say, we have a much more modest list of patrons that I'm going to read off right now. So thank you to all the patrons. fferauu, F-F-E-R-A-U-U. I don't know if that's meant to be pronounced, but that's how it's spelled. Name pending 197. Jérémy, which, by the way, is in our Discord, and he said...
Discord!
He said...
Discord!
That we are, in fact, pronouncing the name properly. That or he doesn't care that we're butchering it. Either way, it's acceptable. So, Jérémy, thank you. Arinomi, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with a 3 and a 0, Trooper-ish, Linux Sys 666, gimpyb, Marc with a K, DeMentor, John the Nice Guy, Marc with a C, Julius, Andi, Jay, Charles, and your friend, Marc. Do you remember the numbers?
I'm not looking at the script, but I know it's
22532.
Good
So
old
thank
2.
you to all of you. I don't care how much you're giving us. You are patrons, and that is awesome. Thank you
I
very
want to
much.
get 2. I want to get 2 on the show one of these days. If you're listening, reach out to us.
I
We'd
wish
like
I knew how to reach 2. But yeah, that's a great offer. Have you been
We wanna
listening since
have
the
you on.
beginning? And if so, we want to hear. All right. If you want to support the show via Patreon, you can do so. Patreon.com/IronSysadmin. If you would rather purchase something to support the show, you can do that on Teespring. Teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. Yeah. Oh, and as I mentioned on our last show, if you join the Patreon at the Iron Sysadmin tier, after 3 months, you should get a shirt. At least that's what Patreon promises me. I still don't know how the mechanics of all this works. So any of you that are Iron Sysadmin tier and hit 3 months from 2 weeks ago and do not get a shirt or something weird happens at 3 months, please let me know. It's supposed to work. And that's a thing that I hope works properly. Marc is one of those people.
And if a stripper instead of a shirt shows up to your house,
From Pennsylvania,
we call that a happy accident.
If a stripper that doesn't show you any of the important bits shows up, she's obviously from Pennsylvania.
But she'll be wearing your Iron Sysadmin T-shirt and then remove it to give it to you.
Wow, we've gone way off the rails today.
I'm just trying to give the live audience who weren't in the green room a chance to.
Now they're like, what in the hell were they talking about? All right. Oh, right, and we've talked quite a bit about Riverside tonight. If you want to try out Riverside and want to support the show,
take me down to the Riverside.
You can live in your van down by the river and maybe record a podcast while you're there. There's a link in the show notes that's like an affiliate link where you can go and subscribe to Riverside, and we get a little bit of a kickback out of that. Unfortunately, you don't get a discount, but we get money, so go do that.
Daddy, I don't want to be van people.
What is that from a movie that I don't know too?
No, there was I forget what the TV show was where they were going to be van people. It might have been the Goldbergs, but yeah, it was funny. Yeah,
that's funny.
I tend to do mashups in my head of things I've seen in popular media, and then they come at it at sometimes inappropriate times.
I haven't noticed, Mark.
Oh, well, that's
you keep it under control so well. All right. Anyway. Right. So we've moved past the announcements. Oh, and apparently B-Sides Delaware is coming up, but Jason's not here to talk about it. But it's coming in November, the middle of November. Was it the 11th and 12th?
I'm going to be in Disney, or else I was seriously considering doing a talk.
Yeah. Cool.
I know, big words for someone who's not going to be doing a talk.
What's wrong with you? Like, just do your talk from Disney. It's fine.
No, that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. I know. Even if you thought it was going to happen, it's not going to happen. Even if you're like, totally, I can do that. You're not. It's not going to happen.
Andy's asking where in Delaware. Is it going to be virtual only, or will there be an actual physical gathering?
It's virtual only this year. I think they're supposed to be back to physical next year, but that's probably what they said last year, so...
Yeah, well, we assumed that people wouldn't be idiots and would actually take steps to end the pandemic, and that clearly didn't happen. But we're not going there.
Yeah, I mean, I've got feelings on that, but this is not that sort of show.
Yeah, good thing.
Anyway, all right, and that's the announcements. Now we can move along into chat.
Move along.
Move along. So I'm working on building Raspberry Pi based desktops for the kids. I thought this would be fun. I have one. It's like right on my desk right now. It's still plugged into stuff. Otherwise, I would show it to you guys. But it's a Raspberry Pi. You guys know what Raspberry Pis look like. I bought 2 Raspberry Pi 4 8 gig models, right? And they took forever to come. I honestly think it's because CanaKit screwed up the order. And then when I wrote them, they were like, oh, crap. Because they shipped the next day.
Now you got me wondering, how much RAM do I have in my Pi that's running my arcade? Because that's a Pi 4.
Yeah, well, these are 8 gig Pis. Because
this looks like it's a 4 gigger.
Yeah. So my goal here was I want the kids to have a normal, like, general computing experience. Like I had when I was a kid. No, not quite like I had when I was a kid. But what the devices they have now are things, like tablets and phones and whatnot, right? And those things, I thought one was about to bust through the door. And those things are a very limited computing environment, right? You do the things
Oh
that they're
yeah.
designed to do. You can't do things that they are not designed to do unless you go through and, like, root your Android tablet. And even then, it's still limited, right? Yes, you have
Yeah.
more access than the average person, but you don't have all the stuff.
Yeah. Just
So,
because you installed an app on your smartphone doesn't make you a technical person.
right, right. So, my thought was I would just put Raspbian on them with the desktop UI and go. It turns out that there's lots of options, right? And Raspbian is great, but the UI leaves a little bit to be desired because it's a very stripped down UI because it's a Raspberry Pi. They don't have a ton of horsepower. So today I tried the Ubuntu build for Raspberry Pi, which looked like your standard Ubuntu desktop, which would have been perfect, but it was kind of glitchy. It didn't, I tried to launch an app and it would freeze and it did all kinds of weird stuff. So I ended up back on Raspbian. So that's that. That's about as far as I've gotten so far. I've really just like unboxed these things and started setting them up. But yeah, so they're in progress, right? The goal is to have them print their own cases on the 3D printer so that they have a little bit of customization to them. I'm going to have them help me do stuff like put the heat sinks on the chips and put the cases together and, have it be a little bit of a learning experience. Sort of show them what the different components of a computer are, even though it's this little all-in-one machine. Make a little bit of learning experience for them. I think it's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun.
Kira's 3D printer, huh?
Yeah, curious. Well, this is absolutely a thing that we're printing for the kids, right? So, and we still have the cat armor that I printed for them. I don't know if I ever showed that to you guys all, but
Andy says creepy doll pie cases. So, and for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I always have to show my dragon pie case.
Yeah.
This actually got field action over
did.
the weekend.
It did. Yeah, neither of us included that in the in our chat today. We had the DEF CON 610 pub crawl this past weekend, and it was
saying
fun.
Hold still. I don't know.
Hold still.
How long I'm supposed to hold still?
He's taking a screenshot right now.
Yeah.
Hold still so it focuses, he said.
This is getting uncomfortable. I could have sent you a regular picture of that, dude.
Like super last minute, I put together my ghost for the DEF CON 610 pub crawl. Inside of it is a Raspberry Pi Zero that's literally just dangling in there.
Dangling like an organ.
But yeah, I found this ghost on Thingiverse, and I just cut a rectangle out of it in what's that? Tinkercad. And then I actually ran out of PLA while he was printing, because he's supposed to have the top of his head, but it ran out right above his eyes. So I'm like,
that's how he died.
I'm like, whatever, I'll print a little hat and I'll stick the hat on top. So,
working as intended.
That's how he's got a hat.
Yeah, DEF CON 610, I was super amped about that pub crawl and not enough people showed up.
Yeah, it turned out that
a bit of a bummer.
Basically just the folks who built flags showed up, and that was really a bummer. We had, I think, what was it, 2 people? Or 1 person? No, technically 2 people, and one of those was an admin that showed up that didn't build flags. We still had fun, though. We ate a lot of really tasty restaurants in Easton. I got to have lunch at Porter's, which I haven't since I left the college. Not that I couldn't. I could always drive to Easton and get lunch at Porter's, I suppose, but that would be a heck of a drive for lunch.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it was a fun time anyway. So anyway, that's Raspberry Pis. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is super random, my wife got one of these discount cards to try out HelloFresh. Have you heard of HelloFresh?
It's the one that sends all the ingredients?
Yeah, they basically send you all the stuff you need to make a meal and the recipe on how to make it.
We're not accidentally doing a paid promotion right now, are we?
No, it isn't. And to be honest, that's the first thing I thought of.
Sysadmin brought to you by HelloFresh.
That's the first thing I thought of when I thought about talking about this. But this is absolutely not a paid promotion. This is just we're trying out HelloFresh, and it's actually really good. The food has been like amazingly tasty. And I don't know about Mark. I know you like food. That's not a slight. I just know that you like to enjoy food, right?
Yeah. So
And so do I,
so
but I like to cook things, right? But sometimes like looking up a recipe and going to the store to find all the stuff. I remember this one time we wanted to make a thing that needed an ingredient. It was like white pepper or something. We could not find it anywhere. We went to like 6 different stores trying to find white pepper. Realistically, we probably could have just went with some other kind of pepper, but the recipe called for this white pepper, and we did finally find it and made the thing, and it was really tasty. But yeah, anyway, they send you all the ingredients and the recipe, so you get to not only cook a tasty meal together, but you get a recipe card that you could then make it yourself later if you don't mind going out and finding all
so
the ingredients.
let me ask you something.
Go ahead.
Do they send you literally all of the ingredients, or do they assume you have shit in your kitchen already that?
There are a handful of things they assume that you have. Things like salt and pepper, olive oil, like stuff like that.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they send you everything.
yeah. You can't assume that I always have, like we generally have salt. Most of the time we have olive oil. Don't always have pepper, but yeah,
Yeah. Well,
weird. I mean, it's easy enough to rectify.
the
I
other thing
thought
is if you don't have pepper, it assumes probably that you don't like pepper and maybe you wouldn't add it to the recipe. You have that freedom,
my
right?
wife doesn't like spiciness, so that's probably accurate.
Yeah, so you could probably
So
leave the pepper out if like it's a thing you don't like.
so I've thought about giving them a spin because God knows my wife and I order out a lot.
Yeah.
So what's the costing and how complicated are the recipes?
So
I've heard mixed things about
the
how complicated the recipes actually are.
I'll say that I thought the price per meal was like without the discount card. I thought it was a little high. Now, it could just me being a cheapskate.
So talk real numbers.
I don't have the numbers because my wife has been buying them out of the grocery budget. Which is
Okay.
basically money that I take out of my paycheck and give to her and say, do whatever grocery stuff needs to be done. So she's been. Plus, she has these things that make some like. It's like a gift card almost, right? So that we're still trying it out, almost free. She pays a little bit, right? So I don't know
Yeah,
what the
okay,
prices
sure.
are,
Okay.
but the recipes. Like tonight, we had shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie is not a very complicated meal. It's like it's meat and it's vegetables and it's potatoes cooked in a way that makes shepherd's pie, right? It wasn't complicated. We've had other meals that they felt a little involved, but at the end they were delicious, right? And again, I kind of like cooking. I just don't like some of the work that has to go into getting all the ingredients and stuff you don't commonly have around the house. And this solves for that, right? So, you know,
All right.
it may not be for everybody, but I've been enjoying it, and I just thought since whatever we talk about all kinds of random crap on this show, I would talk about it tonight.
No, that's fine. And it so we during the pandemic we've door dashed a lot.
Yeah.
I also at one point was getting that
Oh, that
Misfit Market
Misfit
stuff delivered,
Markets. Yeah.
but they screwed up a couple of boxes in a row, so I put them in the corner.
Yeah.
In fact, in November they might come back up, but I might talk to her and see if we want to. Because yeah, I've seen that you can get like a trial run of the Hello Fresh stuff. You
Yeah.
might even have a referral code or something, uh,
If
because you're
if we do, I'll give you the referral code.
yeah
I don't even
yeah.
know.
I'm curious. I think I read somewhere that it maths out to about maybe $8 per person per meal, which some people would be like, "Oh, that's terrible," but that's significantly cheap when I look at some of the DoorDash bills. Um, yeah, it's we're paying a
That's
lot.
that's McDonald's. Like that's how much it costs you to get
Yeah,
a normal
and,
sized meal at McDonald's. And it's
and my
so
only
much worse
other
for you.
child, yeah, my one daughter is gluten free, so that complicates matters. I think I looked at when I was poking at it, they don't they don't necessarily do gluten free as a
I
specialty.
I know that in the recipes, as you're following them, it tells you when you're putting in an ingredient that contains wheat. It doesn't specifically say gluten.
No, but that's good. That's pretty much good enough.
Right.
Wheat or
So,
soy.
but that doesn't help you if you've already bought it, right? So you're going to want to know that ahead of time. And I would,
Well, and that's the kind of thing where like we'd have to split it into like a you know two of the servings are this way,
yeah,
and her serving we try to prepare it. But that's a pain in the ass too.
yeah.
Uh, do they have a green egg menu? Boy, that would be amazing.
Green egg menu.
Yeah, at Hello Fresh, like something to cook on the big green egg. That
Oh,
you just
I agree.
you buy a hunk of meat.
You buy a hunk of meat,
Roll
you
it.
put it on the big green egg. You throw
And
some.
the egg is simple as anything. I
Yeah.
mean, that's impossible to screw up.
Well, with all the cool technology you have attached to yours, it's impossible to screw up.
It's virtually impossible to screw up even if you go old school, just
Okay.
because ceramic smokers are so forgiving.
Okay.
But yeah, with the tech, it's virtually the tech. I agree. It just makes it fire and forget.
Cool. So yeah, that's what I got going on, and that shepherd's pie was so delicious. Like I still feel like I'm gonna fall asleep right now from the shepherd's pie that I ate.
Yeah,
It's
shepherd's pie.
it's one of those meals. So what do you got going on, Mark?
So after spending the time building the capture the flag challenges
Mm-hmm.
for DC 610, um, I'm sort of on this little kick, and we did the capture the flag at Red Hat. If you listen to the last show,
Yep.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the listeners. You'll we talked all about that. I sort of have got this idea that I want to build a capture the flag lab, host it on this guy over here, but that would be accessible across the internet for like my son and his buddies at Stevens or anybody um to do like some CTF type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because my son actually is now um two of his roommates are comp sci. He's pivoting to pure math, which means that at some point he'll be doing more comp stuff anyway, and he's a bit of a nerd himself.
Mm-hmm.
I still want to have him on here and talk about ROM hacking, some of the shit he's been doing with that. But all that to say, um, I'd like to be able to run like a CTF game for his Linux group there one night. They meet on Wednesdays, funny enough, much like DC 610.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want to have to drive to Hoboken to bring the dragon, nor do I want to necessarily ship the dragon to Hoboken. I want to be able to do something that they can access remotely. And um, one thing that's really kind of cool is I found this utility called Shell in a Box, where you can actually set up a web based terminal that gives you SSH access. So I've set up a VM called CTF Jump that runs this shell in a box, and when I accept connections on my router from port 4200, you go to that address and the web browser pops up and it auto logs you into the CTF jump host as the CTF user. And then the CTF jump host has the connection to the outside network, my .50 network through my router, and then I have a 192.168.42 network set up just for the CTF stuff. And now I've got to like play some games with firewall rules and stuff to make sure that if I enable this rule and people jump in, especially if they're not people that are necessarily part of the challenge, if someone just discovers that open port, that they can't play nasty games on my internal network.
Yeah, definitely. It's just something you want to have, make sure is isolated.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, like these are kids you can arguably trust because they're
Yeah.
not random people.
Right, but
Like, imagine the challenges that folks like Hack the Box have to deal with like literal hackers that are
yeah.
coming in for the purpose of trying to break stuff, right?
And some of this stuff I might be punching above my weight class with some of it, but like much in the way that the challenge kind of made me sharpen my Docker skills, my container skills.
Mm-hmm.
This is like I've sometimes struggled with some of the networking concepts. So this is kind of forcing me to get good GUD.
Yeah,
And
right, right.
hopefully I won't just have a giant smoking security hole because I forget something.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of why people run home labs, right? Like you can run the bare minimal home lab that you don't really tighten with any kind of security, and it's probably going to be fine. And then you could run a real home lab where you've got it isolated in different VLANs and you've got a build network and you've got like all kinds of insanity, right?
Yeah, I haven't gone that crazy.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, right? So this is a it's the same concept, right? You if you force yourself to do those things to make your home lab, then you're sharper on those things when you need to do it in real life for real reasons, not just
Yeah.
because I wanted my home lab to be isolated in VLAN.
So what I'm essentially doing is I created a separate uh, bridge in here for the .42 network, and it's just a network shared between, well, right now the jump machine and then the CTF host. I could attach more VMs to it, but my goal was to basically use the CTF host in there and then run containers on it, and then give the containers either their own ports or their own IP addresses.
Right. Right.
One thing that now this is going to force me to finagle a few things. I can do that easily with Docker. Podman's a little pissier about assigning IPs to containers.
I've never
There,
tried it, but yes.
I've started to do a little research on that, and
Yeah.
it's doable, but it requires a little more finesse than Docker.
Well, so Podman runs rootless, and that's right there is going
Yeah,
to be a struggle, right? Um, you may be able to do it with a pod. You assign an IP to a pod, and then you put
yeah,
your container inside of a pod. But I don't know. I haven't tried it. I know
yeah.
networking in pods works differently than networking in Docker does, right?
Right, and so what I would end up doing probably is I would have to have one pod per IP address,
Yeah, yeah.
which is fine, and a
This is
pod
fine.
is one or more containers.
Right, right.
Basically,
So
basically,
normally,
this is going to make me get better.
yeah, normally a pod would be like I've got a web app and a database, so they go in a pod together because they have to talk to each other. But then the other containers can't talk to that pod, right? So my database is safer because the web application, which I've exposed on port 80 and 443, can talk to the database, but the database can't be reached from anything outside of the pod, right? So it's another layer
Yeah,
of security, almost like a firewall.
ogres have layers.
Ogres have
Well,
layers,
I gotta kind of wrap my head around how all this shit works.
right?
And then I just got to set some firewalling. I think on the CTF jump post, I've just got to make sure that you can't you can't do any outbound connections to 192.168.50 except for ports probably 80 and ports 4200 because I'm going to be running a web server. I'll probably
So
expose the web server and then port 4200.
what you could do, and
I
you
don't
and
want
I can,
people to I don't want
sorry,
people to be able to SSH into the 50 network.
I was going to say you and I can talk about this offline if you want to, but what you can also do is your virtualization host is essentially a libvirt host, right? It's a rel box with libvirt.
Yeah.
You just run a virtual network there that is not natted, and then you connect that to your jump host, and you also connect whatever IP people are connecting to your jump host with. And then you basically firewall off the quote unquote public IP or the IP they connected with so that it can't reach anything other than, well, it can't reach anything, period. And then the private network is how they access your flags.
And that's what they're going to do, but I figured I'd have to that machine still needs to be able to whatever, we'll talk later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I did stuff like this when I was running that web host in the basement because I
Okay.
basically had a virtualization host which ran a router, which was basically a Linux box with a TCP IP stack, right, as a Linux box would have. And then I ran another one that was just an IP tables host that it was my firewall, right? And then all of my web hosts were behind it, right? So all my routing and stuff and everything was internal to this one little hypervisor, which of course is a nightmare when you talk about single point of failure, because literally all of my infrastructure was virtual on one machine.
Right, but for a lab situation
For a
that's
lab,
fine.
it's fine, right?
All
There's a
right.
reason I
So
don't run a web host anymore, because like that stuff kept me up at night because I couldn't afford real infrastructure, so that was the way I did it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. So that thank you. The other thing, you and I need to talk about this because we have 4 weeks left for the
Oh, right.
expedition.
Yep.
One of the more challenging achievements in the expedition is to collect 16 whispering eggs. I hope you're collecting your nanites because you need to collect 4,000 of them.
Okay. I'm actually
Um,
close to that, I think,
Good.
because
And some people have set up these farms where you can get the mold, and the mold processes 5 mold turn into 1 nanite in a
no,
refiner.
it's actually you could argue there's an easier way. I guess that's a pretty easy way, but if you go to a planet and scan all of the life forms,
That's a
you get
wonderful
nanites
way.
for that, right?
And if you find every single animal, you get bonus nanites.
Right.
And if you go to the anomaly and talk to the dudes, Helios and the other guy, they'll give you nanites based on your
Yeah, well,
achievements.
I went to one planet that had like I don't know 6 unique life forms, and I got 1,500 nanites for scanning them all.
Yeah,
I'm on
there
a
you go.
planet now that if I find one more creature,
One more.
I'll get 3,500 out of it, and then
All
done.
right, so you're golden. Yeah. So in the last
It's like
expedition,
Pokemon. I'm hunting.
it is.
Got to catch
That's
them all.
right.
Got to scan them all. Anyway,
So the last expedition, we needed these larval cores as well.
what?
We don't need the eggs. We need the larval cores that are inside the eggs.
Right.
And somebody had built this base around one of the abandoned structures where they put like round rooms right on top where the eggs were and then corridors and stuff. Because one of the things that'll happen is the whispering horrors, if you've got rooms, if you've got the rooms built up and they spawn, they don't necessarily pop inside of the room, they might pop outside. But then they can't hit you and you're just jollily collecting the things.
Oh, that's
And
handy.
also, if they do spawn in the room, they can't knock you because they can knock you through the air quite a distance away.
Yes. Although I got an achievement for that. That one where you had to be
That
in
is
the
how
air.
you got that one. I remember
I
that
got
one.
that achievement. I'm like, what? Why am I? Oh, look, I got an achievement.
I
Jetpack.
did.
Don't want to
I
die.
I did the technique where you built basically a climbing wall and just bounced a climbing silo
Okay.
almost, and you just wall bounced between two walls,
That's
and you
funny.
were able to yeah. Um, but yeah, so we need to collect these larval cores, and I've collected one so far. So I think what I'm going to do
They were a
is
pain in the butt
yeah
to get. Now we got to get so many more of them. I think we needed like
you
one or two the last time.
yeah we needed 5 because you needed them to fix the hyperdrive,
That's right.
and you got yours the hard way.
Yeah.
Um, I the
And we
farm
only
that I
each died once doing it. Or
yeah
I died. You didn't die.
so
I don't
I'm on
remember.
I got to the third rendezvous, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find an abandoned building that's got the eggs and clusters around it, and
Okay.
that's where I'm going to slap a base there and
Okay.
build my own farm for that. Because looking at all the other milestones, they all look pretty straightforward.
They are.
They don't look especially tedious.
They are.
And
It did.
again, we got a month to finish this one, so there's not a chance we're not.
Yeah, I played it a little bit last night or the night before. Was it last night? I think it was last night. Well, you and I played the night before. I played for like an hour
Yeah.
last night. Yeah.
I was on last night, probably earlier than you, and
Yeah.
then I might have fired it up during lunch today for a little bit.
Never.
I did.
See, I went for a walk over lunch. You were playing No Man's Sky.
I had a very busy meeting day, and
I don't blame you.
yeah, I didn't get a walk in today.
Thursday, I'm going to conduct a very unofficial Iron Sysadmin poll. How many people feel that Thursdays are too meeting heavy? I feel like Thursday is the day everyone picks for meetings. I don't know why.
Today was unusual. I had a lot of one-offs today.
Okay. When I was at the college, Thursday was always the day everyone picked for meetings. Now that I'm at Red Hat, Thursday seems to be the day meetings always land on. And it actually came up in a meeting I was in today, and somebody said that they think it's because nobody wants a meeting on Friday, so they put them on Thursdays.
No, nobody does want a meeting on Friday.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious if anybody's out there feels like Thursday is a terrible meeting day, or that it ends up being a meeting-packed day. I want to hear from you. I'm curious.
I need to get better about just not attending meetings that I don't feel like attending. I talk a big game, but I'm not very good at hitting no.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I usually only say no if there's a conflict. Or if it's a
Have
complete waste of time. Like,
have
you
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 ever
know the meetings I'm talking about. The ones we all get invited to.
have you ever created a conflict intentionally? Like the meeting request comes in, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to this," and then you make a fake meeting,
You
and you're
make
like,
a
"Yeah, I
meeting
got a
that
conflict."
says, talking about the blah 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 with so and so.
Well, I don't expose my calendar data. People just see free busy.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
I feel like Andy feels seen now.
Thursdays.
You mean that's your new strategy? Because you said that is my need strategy.
Yeah, typing is hard. Maybe he's drinking just like we are.
I'm actually a bit of an asshole. You get you thought I was this great guy as your TAM, but quite frankly, from a business perspective,
Well, you
I can
came
be a
from
bit
New
of I can be a
Jersey.
bit of a jerk.
You came from
Yeah.
New Jersey. New Jersey people, that's just the way they are. Oh, he knew
Oh,
that.
he
Good.
knew that.
All right. All right, I think we finished chat, unless you want to talk more about No Man's Sky.
No, I'd like us to actually get. I'd like us to have enough time to do the news.
Wait, what?
To do
No.
the news
We're
properly.
only at 37 minutes for this half.
Oh, okay, that's great.
But, anyway. All right, we're
Yeah,
going to go into
no,
the
but
news.
all right.
Yeah, one more thing to say?
No,
No?
hit the
Okay.
button.
So in usual Iron Sysadmin fashion, I haven't opened the tabs with the news articles in them yet. So let me do that quick. There we go. And since I brought all the news, you'd think I would not have to open them, and I would just know them. But I got to be honest, this show came together kind of last minute, and the news is the same deal. All right, so our first news article comes from The Verge, and it's sort of par for the course. Windows 11, you may have heard of it. It's this thing that Microsoft said they weren't going to release
Yeah.
because Windows 10 was going to be the last release of Windows. But here it is because Microsoft can't resist, I suppose. I haven't really followed much about the release of Windows 11. We talked about the beta, I think, a month or two ago on this show.
Did we?
I thought we did. Maybe that might have been the show you missed. Might have been me and Jason talking about it. But anyway, the things like rounded corners on Windows are now part of Windows
That
11.
sounds super familiar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may have heard me making fun of it because I think it's a stupid feature. Rounded corners
Dude,
on a
you're
window.
the guy who puts up the news articles about when Android gets a new emoticon, so I'd be real careful there.
You're right. You're right. But anyway, well, I just think that rounded corners on windows is silly because if I put two windows next to each other, there shouldn't be like this weird little gap at the corner.
Dude,
You know?
I am on
It's just
team
me.
I'm on team want to stack them cleanly too.
Yeah,
I hear
right.
you.
So, anyway, and like that's obviously has very little bearing on the functionality of your operating system. I just think it's a silly thing to do.
But no, dude, I can't tell you how many hours I whiled away on the Macintosh just making the selection rectangle and seeing how it interacted with things.
Yes. I remember when Windows 95 came out and they finally had the selection rectangle that Windows 3.1 did not, but Mac OS had for, well, pretty much as long as I could remember because the first Mac I used was like in the mid 90s. Yeah, I remember thinking how it was funny they copied that from Macintosh, but who knows, like I don't know where the origin of the selection rectangle was, but
Windows 3 didn't have it?
no, Windows 3 did not have it.
Inside a window. I thought it had it inside of like icon windows. Interesting.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, you couldn't. No, you could move icons, but yeah, I don't think they had a selection rectangle. Because I remember that being new in Windows 95. Because a friend of mine who, ironically now he loves Macs, at the time was like a hardcore Mac suck person. And when he saw Windows 95, the first thing he did, or one of the first things he did, was clicked and drug on the desktop and saw the selection rectangle and said, "No, it's too much like Mac," and went back to Windows 3.1.
That makes all the rational sense in the world.
Well, he was also like 15 at the time, right? So
I just, it's so cringe remembering some of the Mac versus Windows stuff from
mm-hmm.
those days. So cringe.
I can remember being in arguments about those things, so I'm sure you were too.
I remember Usenet people arguing about it became Linux versus Windows, but
Yeah, yeah. So anyway,
so Windows 11.
Steve Ballmer's fault. So anyway, Windows 11. The article is that Microsoft is starting to roll out Windows 11 to more PCs. Now, I didn't even know that Windows 11 was a free upgrade.
So,
but apparently it is.
so I actually, let's see here. My system does not, according to the Windows Update tool,
Yeah,
my system doesn't meet the requirements
that's funny.
For Windows 11.
This is like a running joke. There's a lot of people that are in the same boat as you, that they don't meet the Windows 11 requirements, and they're like, what? How is that possible? My machine is no slouch. And it's because of stupid things like the version of your TPM module.
So that is one of them.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it says my processor isn't supported, and I've got like, what do I? It's funny when you actually check when you actually check the processors on the list at Microsoft that are supported, it's huge. It goes back an incredible amount of time. And I've got an i7 7700, 4.2 gigahertz, 4 core. Like this thing's not a piece of shit.
Yeah. I don't even know where to
So
check this. This is in the Windows Update settings?
if you go to Windows Update, there's part of it. Part of it might have already done a little sniff check,
Yeah.
and will tell you whether or not it's compatible. And then you can download this tool from Microsoft to do a health check to see why you're not, chosen.
It's funny. My system says it's up to date as of today at 7, but yet there's updates available. It's weird.
That is
No,
weird.
it doesn't say anything about Windows 11 in mine.
Really?
I'll have to look into how to make that check.
Interesting. So I'm not sure if I would. I'm not sure how I feel about Windows 11 because
Right?
my well, no. I mean, it's not an emotional thing. It's like, will it break things like my VR setup?
Right.
Flight Simulator is going to support DirectX 12. Well, my understanding is that Windows 10 supports DirectX 12. I don't need to jump to 11 to do that.
Yeah.
So I lack a compelling reason to even get all worked up about going to Windows 11. When's 10 go end of life?
I don't even know. Like I said, I didn't even know that Windows 11 was rolling out. I feel really bad about that. So yeah, Windows 11.
I have one Windows machine in my house, my gaming rig.
Yeah.
Everything else is either running Mac or Linux.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, well, we have more than one Windows machine, but that's mainly because the kids have school machines that are running Windows.
My wife has a MacBook, my daughter has a MacBook, and everything else is either a Linux machine or a Linux appliance.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would be doing this show on a MacBook if I didn't go cheap when I was buying a laptop. But I don't know. Like, could I have done? I guess Steam VR works on Mac. It has to. So I could have been doing that on a Mac. I guess it doesn't have to. I assume that it does.
It doesn't have to. And the games don't necessarily have to work on a Mac.
Right. So I mean, we're still unfortunately in a world where if you're going to run a Windows, or if you're going to run a gaming machine, it's probably Windows.
You'd actually be better going to Fedora to run your games than going to a Mac.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, well, talk to Facundo, one of our fellow TAMs. He games pretty much 100% on Linux.
Yeah.
The only question is the VR. And
right.
I just deal with Windows for the VR.
Yeah.
It's not worth the philosophic. It's not worth winning the philosophical battle to not be able to play VR as
Yeah, I
intended.
mean, I kind of decided when I bought this laptop that the ease of finding editing tools was more important than ideological reasons for not running a closed operating system, right? So, like, I need flat out, I've said this many times. The reason I run a Windows machine is because I needed Adobe Creative Suite, and that's either Mac or Windows. And running it on Mac was a lot more expensive because buying a MacBook of similar specs was $500 to $1,000 more expensive, and I didn't want to spend the money. So here I am on a Windows machine, and it's treated me well enough. I've had the same Windows machine, the same install, right, for like a year and a half since I bought this machine, and it stutters a little bit in some of the VR games, but for the most case, it works really well. So anyway, Windows 11. If you're excited about Windows 11, it's rolling out to more machines now, and you might want to know that. All right, our next article is actually from NPR. We don't cover a lot of NPR articles. I just realized that. Or I realized that when I was putting it in here on this show. But apparently Facebook is rebranding. And I don't mean Facebook like the social media network.
No, it's the company.
It's the company
They're
Facebook.
they're trying to build the they're trying to build what's the virtual world from Ready Player One. They're trying to build the
The
Oasis.
Oasis? Okay. Yeah, I didn't read that deeply into I basically saw that during the Oculus announcement today, I guess it was today or yesterday or something, Zuckerberg, the Zuck, was talking about how they're rebranding to Meta. Meta is such a weird word to name your company. And I kind of compare this to like 10 years ago or whatever when Google rebranded to Alphabet. Google's parent company is no longer Google, it is now Alphabet. Because, that's not confusing at all. But the same concept, right? So there's a company Facebook and then there's an app Facebook. The company Facebook is now called Meta or will be called Meta.
Yeah.
The app Facebook is still Facebook. The face, as you might want to call it.
Yeah. I this is interesting. Oof. I don't know.
People immediately accuse them of changing their name to try to avoid lawsuits over the whistleblower stuff that's going on, which I
Well,
don't know if that's really even a thing that can happen.
I think it points to a basically Facebook, the application, as much as it's used by lots of people, they have lost. Like, Facebook is that annoying thing your mom and your grandparents are on now.
Right.
And Zuckerberg, I think, wants something bigger than an aging social media platform.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the part that doesn't really thrill me. The idea that if you have an Oculus, you need a Facebook account.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I I don't want to. This is weird, and I'm having a hard time putting into words what my real concern is, but I think you know where I'm going. I don't trust Facebook.
No, I don't either.
I don't really trust Google.
No.
I want to trust Apple, but between the three of them, if I'm going to immerse myself in one of those technologies, the last one is going to be Facebook. I'm actually looking for a way out. I still am on Facebook every friggin' day, and I'm not proud of that because of the relationships I have with coworkers and family.
Right.
And I wish there was some other way to maintain that contact as easily. You know what I was thinking today? I almost want Facebook to start charging a subscription so that I can tell them to go pound sand, I'm out. Because I would tell them to fuck off at that point.
So, 2 points based on your conversation here. First of all, you made reference to the Oasis from Ready Player One, and that's a really good comparison to what this could turn into, right? So for folks who have not read Ready Player One, first of all, I recommend it. It's a great book. You could go watch the movie if you want to, but it's an entirely different story. So I would recommend the book because the book was awesome. The movie wasn't bad either. We've argued about this on the show, not you and I, but me and Jason, because we're both fans of the book, and he's a fan of the movie, and I'm not. But that's beside the point. Where was I going? All right, the Oasis was a virtual world in the book where humanity essentially escapes to now, right? Life is no longer really lived in meat space. It's lived in this virtual world called the Oasis. And the Oasis was designed by a company that tried to remain true to its virtues, that the Oasis was meant to be a place for humanity to be humanity, right? And there was a company trying to basically get rights to the
IOI.
Oasis and own it. Right, IOI. I didn't want to go too deeply into the story, because especially if some people want to read it. But, and they wanted to turn it into a marketing opportunity, a way to earn money, a way to charge, people access to it and whatnot, right? Turn it into a profit center instead of this place that people can go to experience life.
We
right?
can cover the HUD with up to 85% of advertisements without preventing the user from still having an experience.
Yeah, that's actually a line from the book.
Yes.
But anyway, what we're seeing here could be the opposite, right? And this has been in the back of my brain since the moment Facebook bought out Oculus, right? Oculus was, you could argue, a pioneer in the VR space, right? They started making the thing that we now ubiquitously call VR headsets, and they made them in a way that was attainable to the average person, right? Maybe not every average person. It's still definitely a cost sink to get into VR. There are cheaper ways to get into VR, but like the headsets that Marc and I both use, they'll cost you a couple $100, up to $1,000, maybe a little over $1,000 to get a full setup. But anyway, my point is that when Facebook bought Oculus, my first thought was they're trying to make Facebook, but in VR, right? And if that's what they're trying to do here with this rebrand, and if that's their new vision, that kind of scares me, right? And there was another point that I was going to make regarding, Facebook, and you said about charging. Facebook charging, give you an excuse to get away, right, might actually backfire. Because if Facebook starts charging users, that would mean a fundamental shift in the model, right? And first of all, a lot of the trash that you find on Facebook may not be there anymore, because all of a sudden there's a bar to entry. But it could also shift how they make money, which would mean that Facebook might not be the garbage fire that it is, because instead of selling your private data, they're selling service, which is
So ironically,
your
that
access.
might might make it more tolerable.
That might make it a better place. Yeah, that's my point. So, or maybe they would just charge you and still sell your private data, and it would still be just as much of a dumpster fire. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, if you had another thought, go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know.
But I mean, I agree with you. I interact less and less with Facebook, to the point where, and I agree with you on the Google front, right? Like I've been a long time Android user, and a couple years ago I switched to Apple. I switched to an iPhone, then I switched back because, to be honest, I didn't find the platform to be much better. But some of the privacy issues that I have with Google have just been really nagging on me. So recently we upgraded my wife's phone to a new iPhone 13, and I took her iPhone 11. So now I'm back on iPhone again because I like their stance on privacy better. But you're right. There's still a big tech company that could still be taking my data and selling it as profit, right? But Apple's business model is a little different, and they seem to value our privacy a little better. So I'm with you on that one, right? I don't want to say I trust Apple more, but I feel better about Apple when it comes to these devices. Maybe Apple should start a social network. Anyway, I think we've talked about the face enough, or Meta. That's such a weird name, Meta. Does he talk about why he's calling it Meta?
Because it's the metaverse.
It's the metaverse.
Because he's an egotistical fucking maniac who basically is a human-shaped robot.
You're right. You're right. All right, so our last article is from the New York Times, and to be honest, I forget what it is. Internet
It's
age.
about
Oh, this one.
mandatory age verification.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to dig deeply into this, although I'm really curious about how this is being implemented. But basically, it starts out with this story about this guy who wants to go watch a video on YouTube, and he's asked to prove his identity. And it sounds like this really happened. This isn't a story they made up to drive a point home. This guy went to YouTube to watch a video called "Space is the Place," and was asked for identity information to prove that he was above, I guess, 18 or whatever, to prove his age.
Yeah, this is not the case in the United States, but this guy
Right.
in Great Britain, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and right. It's not just like when Steam warns you this game, enter your birthday and you can
Right.
enter anything you want. No, you
No,
need
this
to
is
actually upload legitimate ID to
yeah.
prove who you are. And
Says
I
he says he had to give a credit card or a photo
or
ID or
or
skip the video. Right.
so okay,
And it also says that he decided to skip it because it wasn't worth the
it
hassle.
wasn't worth the hassle, right?
Which is exactly where this is going to go. Right?
So I don't. I'm trying to figure out if I have a problem with this
Oh, I have a problem
because
with this.
okay.
Go
So
ahead,
we
though.
might be point counterpoint here.
Yeah.
Um. So Andy points out a great thing. So I have to upload my photo ID to spammers, right? If it's a matter of trusting the provider of the content as to whether they're going to do nasty things with your ID, that is problematic. So maybe this is an opportunity for some central API type thing where you prove you get a token from, oh, I don't know if this is a great idea or not, like a government site, and that token is used. You submit your token, and that proves that you are who you say you are.
Right.
Good luck with that. Now, when I go to Giant and I'm gonna buy booze because of my youthful appearance, I have to show ID. No, actually, it's Giant's policy. They card everybody.
Yeah. No, I know.
So you can trust the government. Yeah, that's funny. So we've already kind of set the expectation that certain activities in this country, you need to prove your age. Like, let's go back to the movies, right? When I went to see The Wall, I don't remember if The Wall was rated R, but if it was, I probably the movie theater probably didn't do their due diligence because I don't remember being asking them for me to prove my age, right?
Right.
But like, visit the strip club, visit
I would never.
yeah, when you visit the strip club, which you can admit it during the break, I'll bet you needed to show an ID to get into there that
Right.
demonstrated your age. So casinos, we check ages. So there's already a social expectation that some activities we as a society have agreed we age check these activities because we don't want minors to have easy access. Yeah, the fake ID as a rich as a thing, that's obviously, a time worn teenage rite of passage, getting your cousin who has that weird tattoo and who spent some time in reform school, him getting you that fake ID so you can buy beer. That's obviously a trope, right? But for the most part, we've agreed we don't want kids to have access to certain content. So to extend that to our digital worlds makes a certain amount of sense. I will now hand the mic to you to tell me why I'm totally wrong in not being bent out of shape about this.
I don't disagree with the age barrier for content. Right. So you're right. You want to buy alcohol, you got to prove that you're above a certain age, and that's not just government getting in the way of us having fun as people. Right. There are
It's part of the social contract we've agreed upon.
Well, it's not just that, right? There are reasons that smoking, for example, right? Smoking is bad for you. And as a minor, if you start smoking, it could be even worse for you because your body's still developing and whatever. So, like, generally, people have agreed that once you're 18, your body's done developing. Smoking isn't quite the terrible thing it is for your health, although it is still bad for you. But you're over 18, you can make that choice for yourself. You can go buy cigarettes. Same thing with alcohol. I don't know why 21 is the alcohol level versus 18 for cigarettes, or at least in this state. I don't know if that's worldwide, or I guess it's not worldwide. But whatever. My point is that there are these age barriers set for different things. Renting a pornography movie is 18 plus, right? Buying cigarettes is 18 plus. Buying alcohol is 21 plus, right? There's reasons for these things. Now, you could argue the pornography thing is like that's a whole other topic, right? Seeing naked people why is that 18 only? But whatever.
Can we just say that
it's a social thing.
The social contract,
yeah.
We have agreed that these are rules we have decided as a society that we feel the royal we feel protect the youth,
right,
and make people reasonably comfortable. Of course, some people disagree, but when you live in a democracy or a republic, this is how we set things up.
Up until this point, the internet has been a very difficult place to prove those things. Right, so a porn site, which is a perfect example, because a lot of people, especially when they're young, they get on the internet, they want to look up naked women for whatever reason. That's the way it is, right? It's really hard for those sites, especially ones that don't require payment, to prove your age, because there's this certain level of anonymity that comes, it's a hard word to say.
Anonymity.
That comes along with being on the internet, right? If I browse to a website from my house, from my Wi-Fi, through my cable modem, or my kids browse to a website from my house, from my Wi-Fi, through my cable modem, to the website, we look like the same person, right? Because there's no way that they can tell. And that's both a good and a bad thing. I think that the bad thing is exactly what we're talking about here. There's certain content that I, as a parent, do not want my kids to have access to. And the only way currently for us to limit that is for me as an IT person to put things in place that limit that sort of content. For me as a parent to monitor what they're doing, and for the website to say, are you 18? Are you over 13, right?
Are you the beer baron?
Yeah, right. So like if
you the beer baron?
If an 8-year-old walked into a bar and asked for a beer and the bartender said, "Are you over 21?" and the 8-year-old said yes, the bartender would go to jail. Because the kid is obviously not old enough to buy alcohol.
Maybe it's a midget.
But maybe he's a midget. But if you go to an adult website and it says, "Are you over 18?" and you say yes, there's really no other repercussion, right? Unfortunately, the only way to prove that is to ask for some identifying information. Now, if that's a contract between you and the site you're going to, that's one thing, right? This particular, and this is where I start to have a problem with it. This particular article makes it sound as though another entity has gotten in the middle, right? And maybe I'm misreading it, but it sounds like this person's government has put some kind of an age verification wall in between him and his content.
Well, I think what's happening is the government is making the policy and the website is having to comply with government regulations.
Is that what's happening? I mean, we don't know, I don't think, because this article doesn't really go into the how-tos, right? Or the guts of how it's being implemented. But the way I read it, it sounded like YouTube didn't ask him for his age. Some other thing in the middle did.
How the hell would that even work?
Right.
That doesn't seem possible.
So that's the thing that concerns me. If that's what's going on, then that really concerns me. Because that means that there's somebody in the middle of my communications with the website that I'm going to.
All right. So that's not what's happening.
That's not what's happening?
No, there's a paragraph. I know that we don't always get to read the news articles. So
yeah, right.
An update to the European Union's rules for video and audio services requires sites to protect minors, which may include checking users' ages. In response to the change, Google said last year that it would ask some users of YouTube, which it owns, for their identification documents or credit
Okay,
card
so this is
details,
coming
where they
from
can watch
Google
it
then.
all. So yeah, it's code. It's code on YouTube.
Okay, I feel a little better about it now.
They're doing that to comply with government regulation.
Right, and that's a thing that we can't blame Google for. Right, I mean that's a government agency thing. Right, they have to do that to do business.
That is correct.
Right. So it's still.
But you're still allowed to be uncomfortable with it.
Right. So I'm still uncomfortable with it, and I think
but
if
it's
I'm
not
being
it's not the Great Firewall of China.
right, if I'm being honest, I think that part of my reason for being uncomfortable with it is because I remember how it was, or I should say I know how it is, right? Because it still is in this country anyway. But I remember being that curious kid that was able to get access to information, whether I should or shouldn't have had access to that information. And I feel like some of the curiosity and the wonder that is the internet dies. You know what I mean?
So
like maybe I shouldn't have been a 13-year-old looking up how to make bombs on the internet. But you know what? That was a curiosity thing. I learned how to do it. I never actually did it. I never blew up a building or killed myself doing it. But there are kids that do. Right?
And by the way, you'll still be able to do that. It's just a question of, will it be on YouTube?
Well, here's the thing, right? When I was able to do it, now obviously this was 25 years ago or so, when it was like I downloaded a text document from a BBS and I read it, right?
Yeah.
There was no identifying information that went along with that. Right, there was no way, well, I shouldn't say no way. It was very difficult for like a government body to go like, Nate downloaded the Anarchist Cookbook. Right? If I had to upload my ID to do that, to prove that I was over 18, now there's a record somewhere that says this guy with this ID, with this face, downloaded the Anarchist Cookbook.
So what I'm saying, Nate, is that even if mainstream sources of this content are forced to comply,
right,
there will be plenty of mid-range to small places where you'll still be able to get all the free Anarchist cookbooks.
Anybody hosting the Anarchist Cookbook is not going to ask you for your ID, is what you're saying.
And all the boobies you want to see.
Right.
And I remember, when I was the kid, you saw boobies by either finding the magazines in the woods or by staring at the scrambled pay channel, oh, is that a nipple?
It's so funny, right? Because there are, I don't want to go on too far about this because we're already over an hour on this half of the show when the main content was not even an hour long.
But we actually finished.
But we finished the article. So just a quick anecdote. I was reading a thing not long ago about the generation breaks. You know how they define generations, right? And how 1980 is the cutoff between, Gen X and millennial, right? Well, I was born very beginning of 1980. So technically I'm a millennial, right? And I don't like the connotation that goes along with that, right? So I'm like, whatever. But whatever, right? It doesn't really define me as who I am, whatever. Well, I was reading another thing that said there is a very small, they call them microgenerations, I think is the word they use to describe it, where they only span a couple of years. They're not like decades long like most generations are. And they're calling.
Like I'm one of those because I just missed being a boomer.
Right. So they're calling this little gap, this subset of people, which is not even 10 years long, from the late 70s to the early 80s, they call them Zennials, because they're like this weird go-between between Gen X and the millennials, right? They define millennials as kids who grew up with technology in their hands. Right? And they define Gen X as sort of before the technology era. Well, this little gap of people are like, they can remember growing up without a computer in their house. Now, I had a computer in my house, but it wasn't commonplace, right? They can remember not having easy access to cell phones and tablets and the internet and whatever, right? But they weren't like complete Luddites, or they weren't like completely resistant to technology. They basically they transitioned their way from a technology-less, quote-unquote, world into this world of internet connectivity. And because of that, we have memories of things like finding pornos in the woods, not just on playboy.com, right? So there's like this weird little bridge.
I feel like I'm that, because I was born in
Right.
66.
Right.
And we didn't have a home computer until I was in high school. My freshman year, my dad bought us our Apple II, but his best friend had bought one when I was in 7th grade, and I'd be over at his house. That's the Apple II that's in my office. And then, we had the Atari 2600, and we had the Coleco tank game that only played tanks. But yeah, there was a period of time where, yeah, the fanciest tech in my house were a couple of televisions. Not all of them were color.
Right. Right. So,
and we didn't always have cable.
Anyway, all that to say, like we were just talking about this during the break, how you said that sometimes you forget how quote unquote young I am because I have memories of things that make me feel older. Well, yeah. I think that's why. Like, that's the reason why. There was a time when, I was the son of a telco guy who, like, tinkered around with wire and soldering irons in his basement, right?
He's the son of a preacher man.
Which turned into an IT guy who still does some of that stuff, still remembers the days before we had broadband connections to everybody's house. Anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, right?
Did I tell you I had to solder to fix my 3D printer?
You didn't.
One of the wires that controls the bed sensor, the little leg that kicks down, for whatever reason, the wire just broke, and I ended up soldering it together, and it's wrapped with some black electrical tape now to some of the other wires, so to kind of take some stress off of it. But I was actually very proud of myself.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
There's a couple connections on the...
I had to order solder from Amazon because they didn't have any in the house. I had a soldering iron, but no solder.
There's a couple stress points on the Ender 5 that I've got that are the same way, where if you leave them unattended, over time they'll just stress their way into falling off of the contact.
I was kind of impressed with myself. Yeah. I'm not going to lie.
The heated bed is like that, and because of that, there's a model on Thingiverse. Somebody made a stress relief for the cable to the heated bed. You just print it out and clip it on there, and no more problem. Maybe you should look into that for your printer. See if there's stress reliefs for different things.
Seems fine now.
Till the next one fails. All right, so anyway, I think we're about done for tonight. We should probably close the show up. I have kids to get to bed. Apparently one of them is giving my wife a hard time. So we definitely need to end the show so I can drag the kids to bed. Oh, it's the short one. The Hopper. All right. So, folks, thanks for tuning in tonight if you watched live. If you're listening to the recorded episode, we love you too. Thanks for listening. If you want to watch us live, you can find us on the Twitches and the YouTubes and even the Facebooks if you really want to.
Not the MySpaces.
Not the MySpaces.
Not the live journals.
Yeah, I wonder if we can stream live to like Twitter. We should do that too. Stream live everywhere. All right.
Don't add more complexities. Please.
All the complexity. We need the complexity. Anyway. Right. So if you want to do that, just look in the show notes. There's links to all those places. I'm tired of reading them to you guys. If you want to support the show, you can do so on Patreon or by buying shirts. There's also links for those in the notes. If you want to join our Discord community, you can find that in the show notes or on ironsysadmin.com. There's links for all this crap on ironsysadmin.com. Let's be honest. I'm an IT guy. I put links for everything everywhere just because I want you to be able to find it. All the links, all the places. And I think that's probably everything. Did I miss something, Mark? I rambled through all that really quick. You know what I should do? I should make like an outro thing that plays all that so I can hit the button and just walk away and not have to ramble it all off. But anyway, folks, I hope you have enjoyed the show. Mark, you have any last comments for tonight?
Happy Halloween. Collect lots of candy and get fatter.
Right.
Just, do some trick-or-treating.
It's that time of year.
I forget whether we have a show the week I'm in Disney, We might.
I really don't know.
remember.
We'll have to sync up on that and figure
But
it out.
Well, yeah, no.
Well, you're totally
Good
going to record
times.
from Disney, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Can't get this guy to commit to anything while he's on vacation. I don't get it.
No, that's
It's like
kind
you
of
were never a sysadmin. All right, folks. It's been fun. We will catch you on the next show. I have someone looking over my shoulder. Can you see her? Can you see her?
Oh, I see the hopper.
All right, folks. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.